My mother was fixing Heather's veil when Daniel and I arrived at the church. Her hands moved with care, smoothing lace like it was sacred. I hadn't seen that look on her face in years, focused, glowing, almost tender. Certainly not on my wedding day. That thought came before I could stop it, so I swallowed it like I always did. Heather, my younger sister, was getting married. 29 kindergarten teacher, everyone's sunshine, the golden girl. And today, the sun was shining just for her. Daniel, my husband, leaned toward me as we found our seats. He gave my hand a quiet squeeze. 10,000's in my inside pocket, he said, tapping his suit jacket. You sure about this? I nodded. It's her wedding. He didn't say more. We'd already paid for 1/3 of the reception, but I didn't want to discuss money today. I told myself this wasn't the time. That became my mantra. As I sat down, I scanned the rows ahead. My father, Frank, was laughing with one of Heather's in-laws, looking younger than I remembered, shirt-tucked, crisp tie, straight back upright. He used to slouch. Carol, my mother, sat next to him, turning every so often to check on the altar as if she couldn't believe today was really happening. She caught my eye, once offered a polite smile. I smiled back. Then she turned away. Nothing cold, just distant, like I was someone else's cousin, not her eldest daughter. The music began. Heather walked in on Frank's arm, and Carol's eyes welled instantly. Daniel leaned a little toward me again, just enough that his shoulder pressed against mine. I don't think he meant anything by it. Maybe he just knew. The ceremony was short, sweet, traditional. Heather cried at the vows. Ryan, her new husband, choked a little too. They looked happy, radiant even. As they kissed, the guests clapped and stood, some already pulling out phones. I clapped too. My palms felt stiff. I hadn't expected to feel so out of place. But watching my parents glow, shine and beam as if nothing else in the world mattered, but this moment, it hit harder than I'd thought. I told myself I was being sensitive, that I was overthinking. Still, I couldn't help but wonder. Did they ever look like that at me? The reception was held in a converted barn, strings of white lights, mismatched wooden chairs, lavender tied to every napkin. It was tasteful, expensive, and well organized. I knew because I helped organize it. Not that anyone mentioned that out loud. Dinner passed in a blur of polite conversation. Daniel chatted with Ryan's uncle about real estate. I picked at my chicken. My parents were seated at the long head table beside Heather and Ryan, beaming like royalty. I stayed 2 rows down with Daniel smiling when someone looked our way, nodding when Heather glanced over. Then came the toasts. The best man, one of Ryan's college friends, kept it short and full of inside jokes. Heather's maid of honor, her childhood best friend, cried halfway through hers. Then my mother rose, holding a champagne flute with both hands. My father stood beside her, clearing his throat. Thank you all, my mother began, tapping her glass once. We're so grateful to see so many of you here to celebrate our beloved daughter's wedding. Beloved, it hit like a pin under my rib. She's always brought joy into our lives, Frank added. Always been full of light. Daniel's hand slipped over mine again. I smiled tightly and nodded the same way I had smiled through my own wedding dinner when Mom had stood up and merely said, "We're glad Martha found someone." But now they were practically glowing. My mother reached into her clutch and pulled out a small stack of papers. Jake, sorry, Ryan, and Heather, she corrected herself with a laugh. Your father and I wanted to give you something meaningful, something to begin your life together. She held the papers up. We're giving you the family home. The words dropped like a stone in a silent room. Then applause, cheers, clinking glasses. People stood to clap. Heather covered her mouth with one hand, eyes watering. Ryan looked stunned. I felt nothing at first, not even shock. I just stared. Daniel went rigid beside me. The house, that house. The same house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 5 years. The same house Mom and Dad had begged me to help save when Dad's hours were cut at the plant and Mom's arthritis made full-time work impossible. We never made it a formal agreement. No contracts, no paperwork. Just, sweetheart, we're falling behind. We'd pay you back if we could. And I said yes. Quietly. Every month. For 5 years. They hadn't mentioned this plan. Not once. No heads up. No discussion. My mouth stayed closed. My smile didn't move. Heather cried, hugged our parents. Ryan kissed her on the cheek. People around us were whispering, "How generous, so beautiful, such a blessing." Daniel leaned in. "Did you know?" I shook my head, lips tight. When Heather walked past our table later, she squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Can you believe it?" Her eyes shone like someone who'd just won the lottery, but there was something behind it, something too calm. She had known. Daniel and I left an hour later, early enough not to raise alarms. "Daniel has an early meeting," I told a few people. So happy for them, just tired. In the car, I didn't say a word until we were on the highway. Then the tears came fast and hot. I gripped my dress like I might tear it open. "I don't care about the house," I said, voice cracking. "It's the not asking. It's pretending like I was never part of it." Daniel didn't answer right away. His hand stayed steady on the wheel. "You were more than part of it. You carried it. They just didn't want to remember that." We drove the rest of the way home in silence. Not the sharp kind, just tired. The kind where words feel too small for what you're holding back. I washed my face and changed into pajamas before I said anything else. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, untying his shoes. He looked at me like he was waiting gently, like he always did. "They didn't even hesitate," I said finally. Just stood up there and gave it away like I was a footnote. He didn't interrupt. He knew better than to rush this kind of grief. I sat beside him, the fabric of my robe soft between my fingers. "It's not just to the house," I whispered. "It's that they didn't even think it might hurt me." Daniel placed his hand over mine, warm and steady. And that's when the rest of it started tumbling out. I told him about my graduation, how Mom handed me a card with $50 and said, "Spend it wisely." How 2 years later, Heather got a silver Honda with a big red bow in the driveway. "She's just starting out," they said, like I hadn't been. I told him about my 21st birthday, how Mom and Dad said they couldn't come to dinner because Heather had a volleyball game, not a championship, just a game, and they'd already promised her. I remembered things I hadn't let myself remember. The way Dad always answered Heather's calls on the first ring, but let mine go to voicemail. The time Mom skipped my promotion dinner to babysit for Heather's dog. Daniel listened silent, but with that wrinkle between his eyes that only showed up when something really hurt him on my behalf. I didn't care at the time, I said. I told myself they were just busy, that I was being dramatic. But now, I looked down at my lap. Now it feels like I was invisible. Just the person they counted on when they needed money, not someone they loved. Daniel shifted closer. "You weren't invisible to me." I leaned my head against his shoulder. He smelled like clean linen and cologne. Like home. I just kept thinking I said if I worked harder, helped more, they'd see me. Really see me. He didn't say what I already knew. They saw exactly what they wanted, and what they wanted was someone who didn't ask for anything in return. 3 weeks passed. I kept my head down at work, answered only the calls I had to, and left my phone face down every evening. No one mentioned the wedding. No one mentioned the house. The silence was both mercy and punishment. Then one evening my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since that night. Mom Carol. I stared at it for 2 rings, 3, then picked up. Her voice came through bright like nothing had happened. "Martha, honey. We're having a little family dinner this weekend. Heather and Ryan are back from their honeymoon. We'd love to see you and Daniel. Just something casual." I wanted to say no. I wanted to hang up. But a quiet, irrational part of me, the part that still hoped for fairness, thought maybe they'd say, "Sorry," or at least explain. So I said, "Sure. We'll come." Saturday came fast. Daniel drove. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, staring out the window. The closer we got, the more it felt like approaching someone else's home, not the one I'd been paying for. Heather's SUV sat in the driveway. My parents' old sedan was beside it. I hesitated at the front door before ringing the bell. I no longer had a key. Carol opened the door, cheeks flushed like she'd been laughing. "Martha, Daniel." Come in, come in." She hugged me like nothing was wrong. I let her stiffly. Inside, Frank was watching a game with Ryan. He gave Daniel a firm handshake and offered me a distracted hug. "Glad you made it," he said, eyes already turning back to the screen. I scanned the room. "Where's Heather changing curtains in the dining room?" Mom said cheerfully. "She's been redecorating all week." I followed the sound of fabric and soft clinks. There she was, standing on a small ladder, replacing Mom's old blue curtains with cream ones. She glanced down, smiled, and said nothing. Dinner was Mom's pot roast, the one she used to make when company came over. The table was crowded, and I was seated between Daniel and Frank. Across from me, Carol and Heather. Ryan took the end. Heather and Ryan spent the first 10 minutes detailing their honeymoon in Maui, every meal, every towel animal, every snorkel spot. I nodded when it seemed right. Daniel asked just enough questions to keep things moving. Then Carol cleared her throat. So she began tone-light. "We wanted to talk to you about something, Martha." Here it was. "As you know," she said, "we've given the house to Heather and Ryan. They're starting their life. They need space." I nodded slowly, letting her continue. Frank shifted in his seat. "What your mother's trying to say is we can't stay here anymore." I put down my fork. "We've decided," Carol said, "that we'd like to move into your lake cottage. It's perfect for us. Quiet, peaceful, just the right size." I didn't speak right away. I let the silence stretch until everyone felt it. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You gave the house I was paying for to Heather, and now you want to move into my property, without asking." Frank frowned. "Be reasonable, Martha. Where else are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said. Heather's voice piped in. "It's not like you use it that much." I turned to her. "It's mine. I bought it. I decide who's in it." Carol's face paled. "You're not saying no, are you?" "I am," I said calmly. "No, you're not moving into my cottage." 2 weeks passed without a word. I blocked their numbers, not forever, just until I could think without shaking. The cottage stayed untouched, quiet and safe in my mind, like a door I had finally locked. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing ad copy at my desk, my phone buzzed. Security alert, front door opened, Pine Ridge Cottage. My stomach dropped. I opened the app. Someone had used a key but hadn't disabled the alarm. 30 seconds later, the security company called. "Miss Whitman, this is Safeguard Security. We've detected entry at your property on Pine Ridge Road." "Was that you?" "No," I said. "Send the police." An hour later, my phone rang again. A calm, male voice. "Miss Whitman, this is Officer Rhea with the County Sheriff's Department. We're at your Pine Ridge property with 2 individuals who identify as your parents. They have keys but admit they don't have your permission to be here." I closed my eyes. Of course it was them. "Yes," I said. "They are my parents, but they do not have permission to be in my home." "I understand." "Because they used a key and not force, it's a gray area. We can remove them, but pressing charges would be up to you." "I'll come up," I said. "We're about an hour away." Daniel drove. Neither of us said much. I was too angry to speak, too tired to yell. Somewhere in the middle of that silence, I realized I wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes, but not surprised. The cottage appeared as we rounded the bend, pine trees, gravel crunching under the tires, and in front, a police cruiser. 2 officers. And on the porch, Frank and Carol sitting stiffly among a few suitcases and plastic bins. Frank stood when he saw me. "Martha, thank God. Tell them it's a misunderstanding." I walked past him and up to the officers. "Thank you for coming. Yes, these are my parents, but they do not have permission to be here." One officer nodded. "Do you want to press charges?" Carol stood now. "Martha, you wouldn't. You broke into my house after I told you no," I said. "What did you think would happen?" Frank's voice rose. "We didn't break in. We used the key you gave us." Carol's voice cracked open. "This is all your fault. If you'd just let us stay, none of this would have happened." I stared at her. "My fault. You gave away a house I was paying for and then tried to take over my other property without even asking. And now you're sitting here acting like I'm the one who betrayed you? You're so arrogant," she spat. "So selfish. We raised you better than this." I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't have to. You didn't raise me to be a doormat." That shut her up. I turned to the officers. "Can I speak to you privately?" They stepped away with me. I took a breath. I don't want to press charges, but I don't want them here either. We can bring them in for a few hours, one officer offered. Let them cool off. Sometimes a holding cell puts things in perspective. I nodded. That sounds about right. Back on the porch, I said simply, "They're taking you in for a few hours. I'm not pressing charges. But you cannot be here." Carol looked stunned. Frank said nothing. As the cruiser pulled away, Daniel slipped his hand in mine. We waited for the locksmith. While he worked, I arranged for their things to be moved to a nearby storage unit. I paid for 1 month. I sent the information to Heather. I didn't unblock anyone. By the time the new locks clicked into place, the house felt clean again. Mine again. 2 days later, I opened Facebook and saw my mother's face smiling back at me from a post I hadn't expected and would never forget. Today, I learned what it means to be abandoned by your own child. The caption went on for 6 paragraphs, how she and Frank in their golden years were cast out like unwanted pets, how I, their eldest daughter, had called the police and had them removed like criminals, leaving them with nowhere to go, no roof, no compassion. The post was public. There were already dozens of comments, some from old neighbors, some from family, some from people I hadn't seen since childhood. "I can't believe she'd do that to you. So many kids these days have no sense of duty. That girl always was cold, even in church." I sat there staring at my screen, letting the bile rise slowly, steadily, until Daniel leaned over and read it with me. "Are you going to respond?" he asked gently. I didn't answer right away. I just opened a blank status and started typing. Since my mother has chosen to make our private conflict public, I feel I need to share a few facts. I wrote carefully. Not with anger, but clarity. I listed how I had paid the mortgage on their home for 5 years, how they gave that home to Heather and Ryan without ever mentioning it to me, how they'd planned again without asking to move into my lake cottage, and when I said no, how they used a spare key, entered my property without permission, and triggered a police response. I ended simply, "Family is about mutual respect, not entitlement, not rewriting history." Then I hit post. The response came fast: messages, comments, private DMs. From cousins we had no idea. From my aunt in Ohio, "I wish you'd said something sooner. Your mom's version didn't sit right." Even from Frank's old co-worker, "You paid the mortgage. Then she gave the house away." Jesus. The shame didn't lift, but the weight shifted. I wasn't vindictive, but I was done being silent. 3 days later, my cousin Linda called. "I just thought you should know," she said, her voice low. "Your parents tried to go back to the house." I didn't speak. I waited. "Heather wouldn't let them in," she continued. "She told them it's her house now, that there's no room for them." I let the words settle. Not out of disbelief. Just confirmation. Linda sighed. "They're staying in some apartment off Route 12. Real small, month-to-month lease. Your mom took a part-time job at the pharmacy. She says it's temporary." I thanked her and hung up. Daniel looked up from the sink when I came into the kitchen. "What is it?" "They went to Heather's," I said. She turned them away. He raised his eyebrows. After all that, I nodded. "They're in a rented apartment now. Mom's working again." I expected to feel satisfaction. I didn't. I felt tired. That night, I stared at my phone for a long time. One new voicemail, my mother's voice softer than I remembered. "We made a mistake. A big one. Please call us. We need to talk." I deleted it. Maybe one day I'd want to hear her say the words. But not now. Not when everything still felt so sharp. Instead, I listed the lake cottage for rent. I didn't need it empty and echoing anymore. It could pay for itself. Someone else could drink coffee on the porch. Daniel asked as we got into bed, "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I thought about it. Maybe. Not for them. For me. He nodded, turned off the light. I lay in the dark and breathed. I wasn't trying to be the favorite anymore. I wasn't even trying to be understood. The next morning, another call came. I let it ring. No voicemail this time. Maybe she didn't know what else to say. Maybe that silence was her way of finally listening. I watched the screen until it went dark. Outside, the sky was overcast. A soft gray that promised rain but not drama, just a slow, quiet washing. I poured my coffee, sat by the window, and didn't answer. If Heather was the daughter they chose, then they can live with that choice.